Hello everybody, Lance here, and I wanted to talk about a certain cartoon show that I really like. I'm just going to ask this right off the bat. Why am I going to be talking about something that just seems really pointless and just self-personal, just to me, to my own experiences? Well, with MrRepzion, he wanted to, he had made a video about the top 10 cartoon shows. I would say that Samurai Jack would be one. Sorry for spoiler alert. But I realized that Samurai Jack wasn't made in the 90s. I think it was made just right after 2000 or 2001. Still, nevertheless, it was still within my age limit. It was still enjoyable for my particular age. And I would still admit that the show itself would still be enjoyable to me right now, and I'm 20 years old. So why talk about it? Well, take this as, to MrRepzion personally, take this as my response to a certain show that you missed, even if it wasn't in the 90s. Samurai Jack was very narrative, it was thematic, and also had this kind of Hollywood cinematography sort of balance to it as well. And the character himself, he's a samurai, of course, and he was a prince, and there was this evil being called Aku who had sent him way into the future. Now, the idea of this was that, that Aku would have all the time he would need to control the whole entire world before Samurai Jack could do anything about it. And since Samurai Jack was taken into the future in a time that there was still a lot of primitive technology, he was thrown into this world. He was like alien to it. He had to deal with the future and technology and not understanding it. But the advantage that he has is that he has a particular sword that can cut through almost anything, as argued in the show, and that he has a extreme talent for the martial arts, all variations of martial arts, as I don't know them, I can't label them at that point. And the character himself, he's usually quiet and humble with himself. He has a very strict code of honor, since he is, of course, a samurai and he is a prince of a Chinese, I think, monarchy. But what made this show very interesting to me was that I've never seen a cartoon show that tries to be serious and symbolic to adults, but while at the same time adhering to the children who would also be watching it. The children who don't like a change of pace. Sometimes the best shows can come out of variation. I mean, there's a Rugrats which just seems kind of just silly and not really symbolic or message wise. It's still a pretty good show for children, but I don't think adults would enjoy watching just a bunch of children talking to each other. I wouldn't, since I'm technically an adult now. But with Samurai Jack, I feel that since I would still watch that show to this day, that it's a kind of a show that just can't grow, that just grows on, that you just can't grow out of. You can't grow out of it because it's serious while funny. It's symbolic while just being silly. Like, he has to fight a legion of, these oiled up beetles, and since he's all covered in oil, it's kind of the embolism of war. But since he's in oil, it's appropriate, so it's still enjoyable for kids, and it's fucking kick-ass, too, nonetheless, since he always looks kick-ass when he's doing combat. And the whole Hollywood cinematography, there's extreme widescreen usage, there's a lot of frequency with just deft pauses where you just take in the scenery, you take in the silence that says so much without having to say anything at all. And his plight and his goal and his will to just keep pushing on to defeat this demon who had sent him send him so far into the future, and that his goal is to be sent back to the past somehow. But he has such a code of honor that he had been offered the opportunity to go back in the past, but he had to do something that would be morally questionable. And he didn't do it. He was so humble that he would rather wait even longer for another opportunity to arise than to take upon himself the selfishness and the material. And that was a big message of, honor and humility. Nevertheless, the action bits and the dialogue was also clever as well. It adhered to adults. It had an adult and a kid's. It had an adult and a kid's sense of intellect. It made kids laugh. It made kids interested in the action and the adventure and the occasionally silly parts where the adults could labor in the scenery, the environment, this epic scope, the detail, the symbolism, the message behind it. And like I said, it doesn't grow out of you. I mean, eventually with the Rugrats, it would grow out of you. And the idea that they have to make a show where they're all grown up just so they can make them more relevant pretty much spells it out for you, that the Rugrats can get a little irrelevant at times when you start to grow up and you start to realize that the Rugrats just isn't for everybody all the time. But with Samurai Jack, you just keep going back to it. And it pains me so that the show had to end so early. There was still so much to be told. There was still so much of his journey to be done. There were so many other things that were unexplained, but I was intrigued by it. I was willing to keep going with this because I love the show so much. I love the detail of it. As a kid, I love the action. I love the impact, the cinematography of it. As a kid, I love the message. Now I still love it as an adult. It's just one of those shows that just can't grow out of you, and that is the best show. A show that just can't get old, because like with Dexter's Laboratory, maybe as a kid you did enjoy it, but when you grow up as an adult, you look back and think, wow, I was pretty stupid as a kid. Those shows were pretty damn silly. But they still had their own highlights. They aren't necessarily broken just because that you have now grown up into an adult. It's not that a children's show can't be entertained by all. It's like with My Little Pony, for example. People don't understand why, adults and children love it, especially, people who haven't had children of their own as well, in a very kind of demographic. It's the idea of suppressing the idea that that grown-ups grow out of TV shows, where in this it's more just a TV show growing out of the adult. That's really all it is. A show can be enjoyed by all ages, but at some point the TV show will start to wear on the age of someone. So that's why Samurai Jack is a great show, because even to this day I will still watch it, and it still holds and rings true with its messages, and I can still even get past some of the silly bits because they seem fitting. They seem appropriate for the occasion that he has to go through the stress of being completely not only lost in time, but lost in this world that he's not familiar with, that he has to get around towards it. But he gets around with the understanding that we haven't really seen before, because when we're stuck in the alien world, we expect ourselves to be Neanderthalic to it, that we just cannot understand it and will not understand it. But it's not the fact here. So, thank you.